folks, welcome to our Mixed Media Moods with Jen Ingle and myself. You can see our challenge board right here, lots of greens and tans going on. I am working on a journal cover. I can't believe it's September already here. Well, the end of September, right? We are going to start working on October's soon. So here you can see I teach a now weekly art journaling class, and we always work on these sheets of watercolor paper that are 9 inches by 12 inches. And I was showing my class, I like to fold mine in half and then glue the wrong sides together, and it creates this really great book. So at the beginning there, you could kind of see all the pages glued together with a piece of muslin on the binding, but I didn't really have a nice cover. So that's what I decided to do for my Mixed Media Moods project for September. I have started with the same thing. It's a 9 by 12 inch sheet of watercolor paper by Canson, and I've gone over it with some Liquitex gesso. Now, I ended up collaging next on this, so I didn't necessarily have to start with gesso, but sometimes I do just like to prep the page at the beginning. Then using a ruler and a pen, I marked exactly halfway in the book, or where halfway on the page, because when I'm done, I'm going to cut this page in half, and the right side will be the front cover of my book, and the left side will be the back cover of my book. So there, I stitched into place some muslin that I had laying around that I had kind of sopped up some colors with, and those are going to be the ties that tie my journal closed. So those were stitched into place, and then I got out my matte medium, and I got out some vintage, I have a receipt, I have a prescription, I have some book pages, I have that really cute little stencil that has a D on it for DeeDee, because it is all my work inside this journal. I have, you can see there's some music note paper. I'll get out a bingo card, a couple other things, some price tags, things like that. Just some fun things that I can kind of collage and get going. Now, sometimes when I'm collaging, oh, I forgot about this. This little kind of flashcard comes from the Lost and Found collection that I designed for 7 Dot Studio. I don't think there is really any of that collection left available. Well, same with that little scrap of pattern paper that you saw right there that's going in the corner. I don't think that collection is available anymore. I'm sorry, I hate to disappoint, but I do have some left over in my stash, so sometimes that makes it into my projects. I mentioned earlier I have matte medium, and I am being a little bit more specific on where I'm putting these collage pieces because I really took inspiration from that typewriter and sort of like the vintage tones that Jen put in our mood board this month. So I really wanted to pay attention where I put the vintage pieces, because I knew I wasn't going to cover them up completely. I really wanted them to shine through and show off kind of that cool vintagey distressed tone that they have going on. So that's what I'm working on now, just collaging things down. I'm putting matte medium down. It goes underneath and over the top to make sure everything is perfectly secure. You probably did see that I also, even though I sewed in those ties that are going to tie my book closed, those strips of muslin, even though I sewed those on, I also went over them with matte medium. I just want to make sure that everything is super, 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 super secure, and you can never be too secure. You can always be secure. You could always be not enough, as far as safety is concerned. Excuse me. And I really want this to be like a journal I can carry around and show people. These are classes that I have taught and that have gone over really well, and they're very technique specific, and I'm really trying to kind of educate people, and I want them to be able to look at this book and not worry about if things are going to fall apart or come off or anything like that. So I'm just very heavy with the matte medium. That's what I'm getting at. This is just a piece of book text, vintage book text, and it was kind of fighting me there, giving me problems. So I ended up kind of tearing it off and starting over, but no biggie. I did use my scissors to cut kind of a fun scallop, and like I mentioned earlier, I am putting some things in a few more specific places. Like you can kind of see me really planning it out. But I will say this, I also did just have fun with it. I used all the things that I love, like the The prescription, that's that big one right underneath the D. I love that thing so much. I love bingo cards. And so, yeah. Oh, and price tags. Price tags make me so happy. So I've got those on here. And just matte medium-ing everything down. It's not really a verb, but I'm going to pretend it is. To matte medium things. And I do dry some things too. So I dry and come back and, you know, put a few more down and then dry and see how everything's going and just making sure that it's turning out exactly like I want. I love those giant price tags. I really need to order just a bunch of them. Those numbers are so big and glorious. And then I love the black one too because it's completely the opposite. Like the numbers are smaller, it's darker, it's long and skinny instead of short and fat. I love it. This right here, this is a tarot card that came from my new line with 7 Dot Studio called Fortune Teller. And now even that line is almost gone. The time has passed and we actually released 2 other lines. So actually, if you'd like to visit our website, or you can visit the Unwell Studio website and check those out, called Cotton Candy Dreams and Writer's Block. Both of those are really great and there's only a couple days left to get those during pre-order. So I'll make sure there's a link at the bottom, so pop over and check those out. You can see here, now that my collaging is done, I know that I'm going to get very messy, so I am covering up my muslin. I don't want it to get really gross, so I put it in a plastic bag and then I use tape to cover it up. Now here, I'm using some gesso in my fingers, and I talk a lot about this, but it's because I really do believe it. I have the most control over my fingers. So by spreading paint around on my collage, it's kind of helping blend it all together, but it's not too much paint. And by using my fingers, I can really be specific about exactly where it goes. I can kind of work it down into some crevices and kind of highlight some textures and things like that. But because I'm using my fingers, I can also tell when I'm getting too heavy-handed, so I can lighten up the pressure a lot easier than if I were using a paintbrush or a palette knife. And I don't do a ton of it, just a bit, kind of help, kind of, how many times can I say kind of? It's helping me mask those edges of where all the collage pieces are on top of each other. But because I was also a bit specific about where I put them, it's not like it's a mess by any means. This is just one more step kind of in the layering and the process that's happening. I did lose my middle line, and so I want to put that back. And this is strictly a personal thing. I just want to keep in mind exactly where I'm going to be cutting that, because I don't want to get too thick where I'm going to cut it. I don't want to do this where I'm going to cut it, or put that where I'm going to cut it. Then I took a moment and I sewed around the edges, and you can tell where I put that line. I sewed on either side of it for either part of the cover. So I didn't sew across the middle line because I know I'm going to cut it. Now I've got out some high flow acrylics, and I'll have to put a list at the bottom. I believe I used burnt sienna, and then I used Hansa yellow, and I used a green, but I will definitely write those names down at the bottom. I actually myself just got a pretty fabulous starter set of the high flow acrylics, so I'm really enjoying kind of working those into my work. Then I added some gesso to it, and I'm aiming now for that lighter green tone that Jen had in the mood board. So cool. And the great thing about these mood boards, some of the elements Jen and I use all the time, like vintage findings and things like that, surely. But the color combos are really getting us to step out of our comfort zone. So she chose these kinds of cool greens and browns and very earthy tones that I almost never would have done anything with. I'm really enjoying playing with them. At first I was a bit reluctant. I kind of stepped away from my project and was trying to talk myself into it. But then I bought the high flows and I said, go for it. And I did. And I'm really happy with how my journal turned out. So thank you so much to Miss Mixed Media Jen for that. Now I have taken straight to the high flow for that. That high flow is sepia, I believe. And I think I saw Robin Marie Smith do some high flow stuff, and it was pretty cool. And I like it because it's a bit like ink. So it's acrylic paint, very, very thin. A lot of people use it in their airbrushes. That's kind of its intended purpose, but it's a very cool layer to add to your projects. It's so much thinner than any other acrylic paint, and it's still permanent, and it has such high vibrancy, and it's just really, really fun. So if you haven't tried those, definitely check them out. I got a really great starter set at Dick Blick. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't think we're supposed to call it that anymore. Blick Art Materials. And I think it was, I got 10 colors, either 8 or 10 colors for about $42. So it was pretty affordable. That link will be down there too, because that's the set that I used. So just heating everything between layers, and now I've got out, this is kind of my go-to ever since learning a lot from Donna Downey, but it is raw umber and glazing medium, and I've got some baby wipes out, and I'm going to glaze this thing. And it's kind of funny, I talk fairly often about living in the desert and how our art materials react quite differently than somebody who's living on the East Coast or anywhere that might be humid. We never have any work time with our glazing medium. We always have to kind of get it up right away. Otherwise, it creates really harsh effects. Well, it's been rainy here for kind of a couple days, and we've had high moisture, high humidity for the desert, which probably means nothing to you. You wouldn't even notice the difference. But I had to glaze a couple times because I wasn't having anything left behind. Where normally I put down the glaze, I have to wipe it up right away. This time I put down the glaze. Here you can see I'm going again. I put down the glaze, and I actually had to leave it for a second before I wiped it back up. So that was kind of interesting and different for a while there. And you'll see me kind of fan it a second, and then then we got some good results. Yeah, definitely liking that a lot more. It just grungies it up, makes it a little distressed and kind of vintage toned the whole thing. And then now that I've done sort of that collage layer with all those different tones, and then I worked a bit with the gesso, and I worked a bit with the paint, and then with the glaze, it kind of helped tone it all into one more medium tone. And I do have lights and darks, but before I felt like it was a bit blocky, and this really helped everything be cohesive, which is important to me. I don't want, I don't want splotches here and splotches there, unless of course they're aesthetically pleasing, but yeah, I want the whole piece to be cohesive. I do have out some gesso now, and this is a heavier gesso. Before I used professional smooth gesso by Liquitex, and this is a heavier gesso, artist gesso by Blick Art Materials. And I'm just using a plastic palette knife, and I'm kind of scraping that gesso across almost about as lightly as I can, just kind of catching some of that texture that's happening. It picks up the stitches, it picks up the different layers between the collage pieces. And also you probably saw at one point I put down too much, and it was just this really big white glaring spot. So while it's wet, and because everything is acrylic base, it was super easy to just wipe that up, and there was no residue left behind. So it was good. It was good. Oh, I was going to glaze around the D again, but then I decided I would just get out my Stabilo Marxall and kind of just make it pop off the page there with a bit of a shadow. Now that I'm looking at it, I might actually go back and do the inside too. I'm not sure. I kind of liked the light showing through the dark, but maybe it's not quite noticeable. So here, and I'm going to struggle a little bit getting those plastic bags underneath the arm of my paper trimmer, but I have decided that now would be a good time. to cut it in half. And we're getting pretty close here to the end, so I almost made it all the way through, but that top area right there just had to give it an extra little push by flipping it over. And here's my journal back out. And so my journal I mentioned earlier, it's all of my art journal pages that I've been teaching lately and some from the past too, folded in half and then glued the wrong sides together. So it created this great book. And there you can see my covers are in place, and I'll get ready to matte medium those down. But the important thing was that I put down muslin to cover the binding and to really help everything kind of become one nice actual like book feeling piece rather than just a bunch of pages glued together with some stuff sticking out the back. I am using the same matte medium that I collaged with. I do really enjoy this. It's by Utrecht, and it's kind of in between like a gel, like a thicker gel, and a soft matte medium. So it's not quite as soft as something that would be marked soft, but it's not as thick as gel medium either. I really like it, and I can do image transfers with it. I can use it to collage and do all kinds of things. So I did use some alligator clips. Let me reverse. I used some bulldog clips to hold that page, that cover down while it's drying, and it will only take a few minutes, which is also really great. The medium's going to soak into both sides of the paper and just really keep everything in place. And then now I just have some of these clamps. I use the bulldog clips for lots of stuff in my house. They hold wires in place and all kinds of things. So I don't have as many at my art desk anymore as I used to, but I have lots of other clamps. And then I just put something really heavy on top of it. I did unclamp it before I came back to the video because I just wanted to double check that everything was really, really secure. And sometimes on camera, I always feel like you're watching me. So it was easier for me to do off camera, but I did use a Stabilo to darken up that D a little bit more. And that is the Stabilo Marxall, by the way. So I really love that pencil. I'm so glad that it was introduced to me. I use it on almost everything now. This is a Viva Las Vegas stamp that I designed. It's called the Doodle Border. It is one of my absolute favorite stamps. I love to just border things with it to create frames, and it's really fun. After it was dry, I stamped it in archival ink by Ranger. And after it was dry, I kind of grungied that stamp up a little bit with my Stabilo Marxall. And I think that's it. I don't think I did much else after that. So just dried everything and it's good to go, and I can tie the edge. And I'll definitely be building another one of these, maybe a blank one that I can work in. So thanks so much for stopping by. Jen and I will let you know who won the gift certificate. We really hope you're inspired to join us this month. Here are a couple close-up shots. This is Jen's, so definitely pop over. You can click here to get to Jen's. And then, yeah, please subscribe. You can click here for my art journaling videos or here to see my Donna Downey videos. All right. Thank you so much for joining us again. We'll see you next time.